Hi, I'm Bob Duhamel, and this is the Aircrash Minority Report. Today I'm going to talk about what's going on with the 737 MAX. As you probably already know, the 737 MAX, the latest plane from Boeing, has suffered 2 fatal crashes in the last 6 months, and the news media is blaming something called MCAS. Now, if you've been following this as closely as I have, you're not going to learn anything new here. But if you're only getting bits and pieces of the story, or if you're confused by what you're hearing, maybe I can untangle some of that spaghetti. I need to begin with some basic aeronautical engineering 101. Now, for you old hats with airplanes, this is going to be nothing new. You can skip ahead a little bit, but we need to understand some basic aeronautical principles before we can understand what the problem with the 737 MAX is. And I need to start out by getting rid of an old myth, and that is what makes an airplane fly. Now, what you've seen in textbooks and heard on the science shows is only a small part of the story, and that story is that an airplane flies because of the shape of the wing. The story is that the air going over the top of the wing, which is more curved than the bottom of the wing, has to go a greater distance and therefore has to go faster than the air going over the bottom of the wing. And because the air is going faster over the top of the wing, it has a lower pressure, so we have a low pressure on top of the wing, a high pressure below the wing, and that causes the wing to go up. Well, this is true, but it's only a small part of the story, and the faster a plane flies, the less of the story it is. So planes that tend to fly slowly have this rather highly curved top of the wing, which gives us more Bernoulli effect, but this also causes a lot of drag. So planes that fly faster have a more symmetrical wing shape and rely much less on the Bernoulli effect to fly. So what really causes an airplane to fly? The main forces, especially on planes that fly at higher speeds, is the fact that the wing diverts the air downward as it goes through the air. So the wing deflects the air downward, and because of Newton's third law of motion, that is, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, pushing the air down pushes the wing upward. And we can see this in this quick video here showing an airplane going through a fog curtain. Look at how much the air is pushed down as the airplane moves through the fog curtain. So an airplane flies for much the same reason that a rocket flies. A rocket forces gases out the back, and that causes the rocket to go the opposite direction. The wing of an airplane forces air downward, and that causes the airplane to produce, or causes the wing to produce lift, which makes the airplane fly. The idea is to fly in level flight. You want the wing producing exactly the same amount of lift as the weight of the airplane so that the plane will stay in the air. To climb, we have to produce more lift, and to descend, we have to produce less lift. There are 2 ways to change the amount of lift the wing produces. One is to change the speed. So if you go faster, the wing produces more lift and the plane will tend to climb. Or if you change the angle of the wing to the oncoming air. This is called the angle of attack. Not to be confused with the pitch of the airplane. The angle of attack is the angle the wing strikes the air as opposed to the angle that the whole airplane strikes the air. So as you increase the angle of attack, or the angle of the wing to the air, you produce more lift. So at the same speed, to produce more lift, you need to angle that wing upward. As we increase the angle of attack, we increase the lift, but this only works up to a point. When we reach a certain angle, known as the critical angle, increasing the angle of attack no longer increases the lift, and then we reach a point where increasing the angle of attack decreases the lift, and this is called a stall. Depending on the design of the wing and the speed and other factors, this stall can be rather mild or rather abrupt. In fact, a lot of modern planes are designed with the wing twisted in such a way that the root of the wing will stall first, easing the abruptness of a stall and also giving the pilot some warning that the plane is stalling. And in fact, some of the turbulent air that comes off the wing during a stall will cause the plane to shake. And modern commercial aircraft have what's called a stick shaker, which is a motor attached to the controls to shake them to enhance this shaking to let the pilot know that the plane is about to stall. Regardless of the cause or the severity, stalling an airplane is a bad thing, unless we are stalling a light plane to practice recovering from stalls. So what we have learned so far is that an airplane flies because the wing deflects the air downward, and the higher the angle of the wing to the oncoming air, the higher the angle of attack, the more lift we have, all other things being equal. But if that angle gets too high, we lose our lift and the plane falls, which is a bad thing. The next thing we need to look at is the stability of the airplane, and that is a plane is stable when, if it departs from straight and level flight, it will tend to return itself back to straight and level flight. And most airplanes are designed with stability in mind. Now, military fighters aren't so stable because we want them to be maneuverable, but certainly a passenger plane needs to be stable. In most aircraft, the stability of the pitch angle, that is the up and down angle of the nose of the plane, is provided by the horizontal stabilizer, which a lot of people might call the back wing of the plane. The horizontal stabilizer, if the plane pitches up or down, the oncoming air will push on the stabilizer and cause the plane to go the opposite direction. So here we see the plane is pitched up. The wind is hitting the horizontal stabilizer in such a way that it produces lift. Notice it has a high angle of attack, and that will lift the plane back up. And of course, if the plane's nose goes down, we have the opposite effect, where the lift of the horizontal stabilizer is negative and tends to push the tail down. So the horizontal stabilizer keeps the plane stable in the vertical or pitch angle. Now, passenger planes must be designed to be stable under all flight conditions. We don't want the plane getting into a condition where it becomes unstable. In other words, it wants to depart from straight and level flight. So what we don't want is some certain condition to happen that will cause the plane to pitch up, because that will increase the angle of attack, and if we are already close to that critical angle, the plane could pitch into a stall. So that has to be avoided. So one thing that is an absolute must is planes must be designed to be stable. Basically, under whatever conditions are happening, if the pilot lets go of the controls, the plane will return to straight and level flight. And just a quick spoiler here, this is the problem with the 737 MAX. I'll talk about it in a moment, but there are conditions where the nose can pitch up, and that had to be solved. But before we talk about that, let's talk about flight efficiency. The fuselage and engine nacelles of an airplane also produce lift. Anytime they are angled in such a way that the air hits them and is deflected downward, they are going to produce lift. But they are not efficient lift producers. The wings are designed to be very efficient lift producers. They are long and narrow. That's called a high aspect ratio. And that produces lift more efficiency. In other words, its lift to drag ratio, the amount of lift it produces compared to how much drag they induce, is much lower than something shaped like the fuselage or engine nacelles. So when the plane is cruising, we want the fuselage to be flat to the oncoming air so that it produces no lift. And the same thing with the engine nacelles. We want them to produce no lift. So the plane is designed so that when it is in cruising flight, the fuselage and engine nacelles are flat to the oncoming wind, and the wing has a slight angle of attack, the angle of attack that is most efficient for cruising speeds and altitudes. So we have what's called an incidence angle, which is the angling up of the wing compared to the fuselage, to give the wing an angle of attack when the fuselage does not. When the plane is flying more slowly, such as shortly after takeoff or when coming into land, we have to increase the angle of attack of the wings to produce more lift at the lower speed. Well, to do that, we have to raise the nose of the whole airplane. Now, the fuselage and the engine nacelles are also producing lift. Here's the problem with the 737 MAX. The original 737 was designed low to the ground and designed around the General Electric JT8D engine. To improve fuel economy, they adapted the CFM56 engine to later versions of the 737. To do this, they moved the accessory package to the side of the engine so they could flatten the bottom of the nacelle, and then to increase the ground clearance, they had to raise the engine. But to raise the engine, they had to move it forward a little bit to clear the leading edge of the wing. They were able to do this without causing any stability problems of the airplane. However, the LEAP engines that are put on the 737 MAX are even larger diameter than the CFM56, so to make them fit, they have to raise them even higher above the ground, and to clear the leading edge of the wing, they have to move them just a couple of inches forward of the CFM56 engine. The position of the LEAP engines on the 737 MAX tips the stability scales just barely in the wrong direction under just the right conditions. So under slow flight, with a high and increasing angle of attack, with the flaps retracted and the engines at high power, the wind can catch the engines just enough to pitch the airplane up and cause it to stall. You simply cannot have an airplane doing this, so it would have been impossible to adapt the LEAP engines to the 737 except for modern computers. Boeing designed software to monitor the altitude, the flap position, the engine thrust, and the angle of attack, and to keep the plane from going into the condition where the engines could cause the nose to pitch up. It does this by operating the elevator trim, which is a motorized jack screw that moves the entire tailplane up and down. And it will move the trim to the full nose down position if necessary to keep the plane from getting into the condition where this pitch up could occur. This all happens entirely automatically without the pilot's intervention or his knowledge. What appears to have happened in the case of the two crashes is that the one angle of attack sensor that the MCAS system monitors appears to have given faulty information, causing the elevator to go into the full down position, and the pilots were unable to recover. So how could Boeing put such a system on their airplanes and not tell pilots about that and not train them in what to do in case it fails? Well, it turns out that an MCAS failure has the same symptoms as a trim runaway and has the same solution. The solution is to place the trim cutout switches in the cutout position. This cuts power to the jack screw motor and disables MCAS. And in case there's a mechanical or aerodynamic problem still causing the trim problem, the next solution is to grasp and hold the trim wheels to keep the trim runaway from continuing. Therefore, the MCAS should require no extra training. Handling a trim runaway is part of standard pilot training, so by default they are already trained to handle an MCAS problem. In fact, the day before the Lion Air crash, the same plane had an issue with its MCAS system, and there was a third pilot on the flight deck who told the flying pilot to put the trim cutout switches in the cutout position, and that solved the problem. Whether that problem was reported and anything was done about it, we don't know, but we do know that one pilot did know what to do when the problem happened. So what's the bottom line? Well, we won't know that until the final crash reports come out, but I think it's going to turn out to be a pilot training issue. Boeing is reprogramming the MCAS system to monitor both angle of attack sensors and to tell the pilots when the sensors disagree. This will certainly make the planes a little bit safer, but these are two crashes that shouldn't have happened. The pilots should have had training to recognize and handle a trim runaway, which has the same symptoms and solution as an MCAS problem, and indeed one pilot did recognize it and did do the right thing. So what's my opinion? Well, we've had 2 MCAS failures in 6 months, and there aren't that many 737 MAXs in the air right now, so I think that's too many. So they do need to modify the system to be more robust. But in the end, I think the planes were safe to begin with, and the problem comes down to improper training of the pilots. We won't know for sure until the final crash reports come out later on this year. So I hope this has cleared things up for a few people, and thanks for watching.